Welcome to Kansas Ag Report. I'm Ken Rogers. On this week's program, we talk with Justin Wagner, Extension Beef Specialist with K-State Research and Extension in the Southwest District. We'll talk about some considerations based on the grass situations in western Kansas. Also, some data they're compiling each month based on feedlot activity. We'll also have features from the Kansas Soybean Commission, Kansas Department of Agriculture, and Kansas Grain Sorghum, along with a weekly update from the Kansas Livestock Association and market information from Pinion, a division of K-Coe Isom. Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers. Kansas Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farm and ranch families since 1919, kfb.org. And the Kansas Wheat Commission, lending in the adoption of profitable innovations from wheat, online at kswheat.com. In agricultural news, a number of factors setting up red flags about slowing economic activity and a potential upcoming recession. A CoBank report says inflation is the largest red flag, and the Fed is already raising rates, and they will until they believe inflation has been under control. Warehouse and inventory costs still rising at near peak levels, and transportation costs are rising at much higher rates than before. Those words from Dan Kowalski, the vice president of CoBank's Knowledge Exchange Division. He also says that grain railcar availability and prices were at multi-year lows and highs, respectively, in the second quarter. Now, shifting economic sentiments has brought agriculture and energy commodity prices down from their peak, and grain prices in the second quarter remain volatile, but grain and oilseed prices should push higher because of tight global commodity supplies, especially for wheat and soybeans. Now, there are challenges ahead because of how dry July has been, as well as Asian-made crop protection chemicals will continue to be in short supply. USDA provided a little more details in the broadening of the double cropping following another crop, or FAC, rules for insurance for 2023. The intent of the rule is to prevent a lack of crop insurance availability from being justification for farmers not taking the additional risk to plant when the market is demanding it. Now, this will make crop insurance more readily available for those that are double cropping where appropriate. They're still working on the map and policy. RMA is taking more input through a contract changing dates in November when it should be released. And U.S. grain exports in all forms totaled 96 million metric tons during the first 9 months of the current marketing year. The exports to 145 countries are just under the total of the same point in the previous marketing year. Increased grain exports to Mexico, Canada, and Colombia helped to offset year-to-date losses in China and Japan. Now, those 5 markets account for almost 70% of the grain in all forms of commodity exports. Mexico surpassed China month over month to become the top market for U.S. grains in all forms, exports of totaling 21 million metric tons during the first 9 months of the 2022-23 marketing year. China, the second largest export market, exports of 20 million metric tons during the same period. Dan Halstrom, U.S. MEF, when we return.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
What if U.S. soybean meal were more than a commodity? If seed companies and the soybean checkoff built a better variety? That future is here, The time is now. To meet end-user demands, the Soybean Checkoff is investing in the compositional quality of soybeans, including meal. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Next time you see a beautiful field of corn, reach out and thank the farmers who work tirelessly to raise corn for livestock feed, renewable fuels, and exports to feed a growing world population. The farmers on the Kansas Corn Commission work for Kansas corn with grower-funded checkoff dollars that support foreign and domestic market development, research, promotion, and education to expand opportunities for Kansas farmers. To learn more, visit kscorn.com.
Many seed companies claim to offer the latest genetics, but how many have tested those genetics in soils just like yours? The Oldie Seed Know to Grow research program has fully tested the latest seed genetics in soils that are right in your neighborhood. The Oldie Seed Know to Grow program can recommend the best performing hybrids from technologies like Enlist, Extend, and LibertyLink that will optimize the yield and profit of every acre on your farm. Contact Oldie Seed today.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by Kansas Grain Sorghum, growers working together. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. grassandgrain.com. And joining us now is Dan Halstrom, who is the president and CEO of the U.S. Meat Export Federation. Hi, Dan.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Always great to catch up with you. And we're going to talk about the May export numbers, which show really good things. But before we get to that, just in the last days, a good friend seemingly of the U.S. and something that was very good for ag trade, former Japan Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, was gunned down. But just want to get your comments on the impact that he had working with you and others when it come to the relationship and the trade between Japan and the U.S.
Yeah, former Prime Minister Abe-san was a very important ally to the U.S. in a lot of ways, but specifically around trade, he was really a pioneer. He was a champion for trade and for increased relationship globally on trade, but in our case, especially with the U.S. And he had his hands in a lot of different things, none bigger than the U.S.-Japan ag agreement that was implemented in 2020. He had a very large role in promoting and getting that over the finish line, so to speak. So yeah, we lost a real friend, a real ally to the U.S. A few days ago, which is very unfortunate. But we need to remember him for what he was. And he was a real champion for a great relationship with the U.S. in general and specifically on trade.
Well, and what a outpouring as well from a lot of folks all over the world. So anytime, you lose a leader like that in someone such an important market as Japan, is one of those that maybe you take pause. So, but Dan, as they say, things continue to move. So let's get into, the numbers you released just a few days ago as well. With everything we hear is one thing seemingly, but when we see the numbers, another strong month for especially beef exports.
Yeah, the May export stats were very positive, record-breaking on beef, record-breaking volume for the month of May, and record-breaking value for the month of May. And it's really similar to the previous few months in terms of the background on this. It's broad-based growth. China continues to have a strong role, up 36% at 22,000 tons. But it's a lot of other markets as well. The ASEAN region, Indonesia and the Philippines were strong. The Caribbean region was strong through a variety of countries. And it's really Ken, it's no coincidence that we're seeing a lot of massive growth in these countries that have had food service reopen for a while now. And a very good example of that would be the Caribbean region, which has been back to on the way to normal for well over a year now. So we're seeing the benefits there. And, let's keep in mind, we had a record month with the volume down slightly in our two largest markets, Japan and Korea. I mean, they were still good months, down only slightly, but it's really amazing when you think about the beef performance with your two biggest markets down a little bit. Everyone else picked up the slack. So having a diversified portfolio is very important.
Dan Halstrom, who is President CEO of U.S. Meat Export Federation, joining us. Let's take a quick break. Back with more in just a moment. Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Livestock Association, supporting members' business interests and meeting consumer demands. KLA.org. Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. And Kansas Corn, building the future at kansascorn.com.
Grain sorghum is one of the most important cereal crops worldwide, and Kansas leads the nation in its production. Over the years, sorghum has been either exported, used in animal feed domestically, or for other industrial uses. Recently, its use in the ethanol market has seen tremendous growth, with 30% of domestic sorghum typically going to ethanol production. Kansas Grain Sorghum is committed to sorghum research, market development, and education. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org.
And Dan Halstrom with the U.S. Meat Export Federation is joining us. And Dan, as we look at some of the things you talked about of another $1 billion for the fourth time this year. Beef exports and others, pork, other proteins are strong as well. But let's continue that conversation about the beef market, and are we making more headway in some other new markets, or is it just that whole inflationary? I mean, give us kind of the skinny of why we continue to see these large dollar numbers.
Well, I think part of it's prices are higher, of course. So the inflationary aspect is contributing, but I think there's a larger overriding theme here, and that is that there's a demand for our products, the higher end demand in a lot of these markets. Keep in mind that the retail has been absolutely booming, and as I alluded to in the first segment, these markets that have the food service returning, like the Caribbean region, like places like in Central America with Walmart and some of these key chains down there. When the food service complements that retail business, it makes for a winning formula. But I'm really optimistic about the last half of the year on beef and pork, for that matter, as food service starts to gain a foothold and rebound in these Asian countries.
Talk briefly about pork. Exports had its strongest month in May.
Yeah, I mean, we were down big again, but this is we're down 20%. This is the same theme from earlier in the first quarter. But it was our largest export month of the year. And keep in mind, we're comparing to some record-breaking quantities from a year ago, mainly from China, when ASF was still very much an issue in China. So as we go forward to the last half of this year, the year-on-year comparisons will be much smaller in terms of the last year's quantities. So we're anticipating a rebound in growth last half of this year. But if you look at the numbers, the real story, again, continues to be Mexico and the Latin American region in general for pork. We're up 12%, almost 80,000 tons in Mexico. But other markets that show a lot of promise, we were big growth in Colombia, up almost 20%. The Caribbean region, similar to beef, is up big for pork. And you have some other regions like the Oceania region and some of these other smaller markets that saw some growth as well. So yeah, I think we're, even though we're down, we're positioned for a rebound in the last half of this year on pork.